Time to get some work done. You ever need to do some cleaning? I feel like a lot of the time these days, like that's how I spend half of my time is cleaning. Don't know about you. If you could see the rest of the youth center right now, you would go, looks like you need to do a little bit more cleaning, James, and you would be right. Cleaning is important. This is not why you're watching this video, by the way. Tips on cleaning? Probably not, but sometimes it helps to have a place to put things. And so that's what I was doing, putting boxes where they go. There are things inside each box, so that way you can find things easily and keep track of them. And while sometimes that's a really good and really important thing to do, there are other times that that's not the best way to handle things. Now, with your stuff and your cleaning, perfect. But when it comes to our faith, I wonder if we do the same thing. I wonder if there's a time when we take our faith and we put it in a box over here, and then school is over here, and family's over here, and friends are over here, and church is over here, and whatever else. We kind of put them in their own place where they'll never really end up meeting. I don't know if that's the best thing for us to do. Well, Jesus in Luke chapter 16 tells this story. It's called the parable of the shrewd manager. And it's a really interesting story. And as much as I want to dive into that, there's a part at the end here when Jesus starts talking that I think is so important to us as we think about how we handle our faith. Luke chapter 16, starting in verse 10, it says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." Jesus, at the end of this parable, says, hey, here's the thing. Money is good, but God is better. And when we try to serve both God and money, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. No matter how hard we try, we can't serve both. And I think in an effort to serve both of those things, or maybe even multiple other things, we try to kind of separate them out. Well, you may not be able to trust me with this, but you can certainly trust me with that. Well, that's not always true. And so we compartmentalize. We make these little boxes. We make these places to keep our faith in order to help keep things nice and tidy. But here's the thing about faith and belief in God, is that faith is all-encompassing. And faith is something that invades every part of your life. Paul, in one of his letters, writes, when Christ, who is your life, meaning when Christ, who is your life, like is taken over everything, that God has taken over every part of your life. And yet we try to put that in a box and keep it nice and neat, instead of letting faith permeate everything else. The problem is when we make those boxes and we put our faith neatly in a box on the shelf, then really what we're doing is instead of letting our faith in God permeate everything, invade everything, we are actually letting our own humanistic desires take over everything, our selfishness take over everything, because then what we're doing really is saying, I'm in control and I'm going to put God over here and family over here and friends over here and money over here and my job over here and whatever else over here. Instead of letting our faith permeate everything, we let our selfish desires take over everything. And this is a big problem. Jesus says, you can't serve two masters. You can't do it. You can't be 100% in both camps. You can't 100% be a follower of Jesus and 100% do what you want to do. That's not how we do that math. You can't even 50% be a follower of Jesus and 50% do what you want to do. No, part of following God is saying, I'm all in. I'm all in. I'm not going to try to put things in boxes and control the situation. No, instead, I'm going to do what God calls me to do. Jesus strikes a nerve with this parable because look at what he says in verse 14. It says, the Pharisees who loved money heard all of this and were sneering at Jesus. They're giving him a hard time. They're making this difficult. And they're, I don't know. Verse 15, he said to them, you are the ones who justify yourself in the eyes of others, but God knows your heart. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight. Man, these guys thought they had it all together, and they thought they had everybody fooled, and they thought they had God over here and money over here and fame and notoriety and publicity over here, and they just thought they had everything under control. And when Jesus questions that and calls that into question and says, hey, you know what? You can't do both. That's not how this works. They go, oh, Jesus, you don't even know. Like, what do you... And then he calls them out again, and it's not pretty. I know for me, there are many times that I would rather just do what I want to do. It's easier sometimes. It's easier a lot of the times, especially if you're not in a good place spiritually. It's easier just to go ahead and do whatever you want to do. If you've been falling away from God, or if this crazy time in our lives has pushed you further away from God, I'm guessing it's easier and easier to do whatever it is you want to do. And you have firmly put God in a box over here, and you are just doing whatever you want. Because when we have removed ourselves further and further from God, it becomes that much easier to make choices that don't honor Him. You can't serve both God and money. You can't serve God and friends. You can't serve both God and desire. You only can serve God. I mean, that's the way we're designed. We're designed to do that. Not put God in a box, not compartmentalize, but instead to let the Spirit of God permeate our lives, travel throughout our lives, invade our lives to the point where He is what shows up instead of ourselves. So here's what I want to challenge you with today. Are you trying to put God in a box? Or have you just successfully moved yourself away from God? It's been easy to do over this time. You're not around the same community all the time. You're not devoting yourself to God's word. You aren't praying on a regular basis. You aren't participating in worship. You aren't watching these videos or doing the live stream or something else with us to continue to encourage you in your faith. Whatever the case might be, if you have moved yourself away from God, it's really going to be tough to get yourself back. Fortunately, God lends a hand. He pulls us out of the mire and of the deep, and he brings us back to him. I hope that's not where you're at today. I hope you haven't put God in a box and have just gone on with your life. I hope instead that you'll be challenged, just like these Pharisees were, to think about how it is you approach life. Do you see God as someone, and your faith in God as something that controls and leads your life? Or do you just see it as another part of it? I want to encourage you today to take the leap, to make that jump from just having God as a part of your life to having God be your entire life. I hope and pray that you'll continue to let God shape you and mold you, that this week you will not put him in a box. Instead, you'll release the power of God in your life, and that you will be someone who follows God wholeheartedly. I love you, and I'm thankful for you, and I hope to see you soon. Have a great week.